For this video, I'm going to be going over my perfect keto food list that is also perfect for anyone on the carnivore diet. And what I mean by perfect is that these foods have a very close fat to protein ratio by grammage, so they can help balance your macronutrients, and then you can snack with other foods throughout the day. But provided your core meals are made of these, you shouldn't have any problems. And here's a little example of what I mean by that. As you can see, 1 gram of fat has 9 calories, 1 gram of protein has 4 calories. So if you eat 78 grams of fat for a total of 700 calories and 75 grams of protein for a total of 300 calories, it pretty much gives you an almost exact 70 to 30 fat to protein split. Now, different people will react differently. Personally, I'm usually best between 60 and 70% fat and the rest of my diet protein. I do know people who are a little bit lower in fat and a little bit higher, so test and adjust to find your perfect macros, but most people shouldn't go wrong with these foods. So the first food is ribeye steak, and it's a core staple for me right now. I absolutely love ribeye steak, and its fat to protein ratio is almost perfect, as you can see here, with fat being around 20 grams and the protein being around 19 grams. I do see a lot of people saying they've tried lion diet and they'll use rump or sirloin steak and their fat content's just not high enough to give them energy or anything like that. So ribeye is almost always going to be the best steak unless you want to balance your macros in other ways. Next up we have eggs, and I do eat eggs a lot, but it is more of a supplementary food with something like ribeye or filleted fish or scallops or something like that. Now, eggs aren't perfect, but they are close. As you can see here, the average egg has around 9 grams of fat and around 13 grams of protein, but that does change between different types of eggs, be it free range and things like that. But most eggs will usually be around 60% fat and 40% protein. Next up we have mackerel, and I know some people really don't like fish or seafood. Personally, I love mackerel. It's definitely one of my favorite types of seafood. As you can see here, the fat to protein split for mackerel is almost perfect by gram, giving you that 70 to 30 fat to protein split. Just keep in mind that some supermarkets will add sauce or flavouring to their mackerel that might not fit a keto or carnivore diet. Next up we have 20% ground beef, and this one is specifically 20% ground beef. The 5, 10 and 12, 15 versions do not work as well. You will need to take action to balance your macros elsewhere. The 20% version is perfect though. As you can see here, it's around 20 grams of fat per 100 grams of ground beef and around 18.4 grams of protein. This is another common mistake that I see with my friends who try keto. They'll try the 5% ground beef and then they'll have issues because their fat content is just not high enough to give them energy. With this, it's almost perfect with the 20% variant, and thankfully the 20% variant of ground beef is usually cheaper than the other types. Next up is chicken thighs, and I do like chicken thighs, but there are some caveats. In Tesco, which is my local supermarket here in the UK, if I get the ones with the bones removed from the thigh, the skin and fat has usually also been removed, so specifically get the one with the bone in the thigh. As you can see here, the fat to protein ratio by gram is almost perfect, provided it's the one with the bone still in the thigh. Like some of the other foods on this list, some people will add sauce to this. That might not make it keto or carnivore friendly, but all in all, it's a great food. Next up is bacon, and just a quick caveat for this one, I'm in England. Here in Europe and especially the UK, our bacon is a different cut to US bacon, so the macros might be a little different, so always check it. Here in the UK though, British bacon is perfect for keto and carnivore. As you can see here, the fat to protein ratio by grammage is very, very close to perfect, so you shouldn't have any issues if you have a decent amount of bacon in your diet. Next up is sardines, and this one can trick a fair few people, especially here in Europe, but this is starting in North America as well. Everything labelled as sardines is not actually sardines. Legally, any small fish can be sold as sardines. For example, you can buy a tin that'll say bristling sardines, which is usually the European term, which basically means it's not sardines in the tin, it is sprat. Personally, I actually like the taste of sprat. I know the slide is marked as sardines, but this is actually the stats for sprat, because here in Europe it's very common that you'll buy bristling sardines or sprat rather than actual sardines. And as you can see, the fat to protein ratio is almost perfect. Look at the ingredients on the tin. If it says sardines, it's sardines inside. If it says sprat, then it's sprat inside. They are different fish. Both very good. Personally, I do prefer sprat though, but I have seen some people getting annoyed that they think they're buying sardines and it is a different fish inside. Next up, we have 20% ground pork, and just like the 20% ground beef, this does have to be the 20% version. Here in England, this is a little bit of a pain to find. My local butchers in the market do it, so do Morrison's, but Tesco only go up to 12%. If you are going with a lower percentage of fat, you will need to balance your fat macros in most cases. Sometimes I just prefer ground pork over ground beef. Next up is lamb chops, and this one can be a little bit of a pain, at least in England, because the cut from the lamb chop can be from different parts of the lamb, so the fat content can be different. If you have a Tesco next to you, their lamb chops are literally these ones. This is where I got the screenshot. As you can see, their fat to protein ratio is almost perfect, but I have seen some lamb chops in other supermarkets that have slightly less fat. Next up is pork chops, and this was my main food for my recent round of keto before I came into carnivore. I think I had pretty much nothing but pork chops, bacon and cheese for about 6 months. So I'm a little bit burnt out on pork chops right now, but again, it's a great food for carnivore and keto. As you can see here, the fat to protein ratio is almost 1-for-1 again, helping you keep things simple, and pork chops are usually quite cheap, making it a great option for people on a budget. Next up is chicken wings, and it is rare that I have these personally. It just takes too much time and effort to actually get to the meat. I prefer something else like a steak, lamb chop, pork chop, or even chicken thighs, but a lot of people do like chicken wings. As you can see, the fat to protein ratio is ideal. Keep in mind, some places do add sauces, so the chicken wings you buy might not be suitable for keto or carnivore, so always check the label for carb content. Finally, we have mozzarella. A lot of other hard cheeses are perfect as well, but as you can see with mozzarella, the fat to protein content by gram is almost perfect. It's almost 1-for-1. I ate a lot of mozzarella when I was on keto a few years back with the pork chops and bacon, like I mentioned earlier. I love mozzarella. It's definitely my favorite cheese.